Who are the top TURs in Dokkan Battle? How's it, everybody? Celtic Link here. We got another Dokkan Battle video for you here today. We are taking a look at the most recent TUR releases and adding them to our rankings of some of the best TURs released this year. It's been a while since we've done our update. Our last update was post Golden Week, pre Metal Cooler, so it's going to be an interesting video, maybe a bit of a long one, but let's go ahead and jump on in. As always, when we do our tier list, we do them a little bit differently. As you can see here, our layout is more of a proper structured tier list of the most recent TURs to TURs from about a year ago. I think my cutoff is a little over a year. Basically, 2 anniversaries is going to be my cutoff for the list, and we'll cycle units throughout there, because at that point, that's really when they start to become, I don't want to say unusable, but less desirable. From there, of course, in order to place these units, we look at 3 major things. We look at power, versatility, and consistency. Power can come in the form of raw offense or raw defense, right? What is their role in those terms, and do they do that job? Secondly, we look at versatility, right? How many different places can this unit be used, right? What different types of fights can they be used in? And how many different types of teams they can be used on? This one is especially important nowadays because, a lot of units are very, very strictly stuck to a single team. And when you try to move them from that team, they don't perform as well. And I do think that that's something that does warrant consideration. Finally, we look at consistency. What is the unit's role? Does it do it? And does it do it well? So if you are interested in this tier list, let's go ahead and jump on in. If you would rather just see a traditional top 10, go ahead and check the link in the description. There is a timestamp for when we put together the final top 10, in our opinion. Not really a fan of those, but I know some of you guys are interested in seeing it. So it's there. Check it out at the bottom. So let's go ahead. Let's jump on in. So the last unit we discussed upon our tier list back at the end of May were the God Goku and the Beerus. At that point, we had not yet had the EZA of the God Goku. So we're going to go ahead and start with him and his placement. So as always, we want to talk about power first, right? Honestly, in terms of raw power, he's pretty good, right? He does, while in his god form, he is greatly stacking attack and defense. And of course, right, he maintains that, key sphere changing for the first 6 turns, which really helps him get not only that extra dodge that he has, but also that extra those extra stacks as with 6 or more key spheres, he's getting an extra super attack as well as support. And this one is really the good piece for here. And I think this is what really helps him out on his teams, right? Is on top of being able to stack, and he does stack pretty fast, mind you, on top of being able to stack, right, in the 3rd slot with at least 4 key spheres, he becomes a really good support unit, supporting superclass allies for 30%, which isn't much, but if you're running them on a Realm of Gods category, they all gain an additional 20%, and then effective against all types. That's really helpful for characters like, say, Phys UI Goku, who can take a while to build up his crit, so giving him effective against all types with that support does really, really help him. And then, of course, right, he does have the ability to transform into Super Saiyan, where his offense just explodes. Now, it's only for a couple of turns, but realistically, that's all you need with this setup, right? Offense and defense explode. He has 90% dodge before attacking, and then after attacking, he's pretty defensive, right? Able to tank, like at the end of Festival, right? Able to tank Festival Vegito, for example. Like that's the level of offense and defense we're talking by then. So in terms of power, he's got it in spades. Versatility, simply by being nature of a Goku and Super Saiyan Goku at that transformed, he is pretty versatile. His only major restriction is wanting to be with 6 or more super class allies, which means you really can't have any extreme characters floating around, but that's honestly not that big of a deal when you consider most of the teams you're going to be running him on, right? Realm of Gods, you're probably mostly super class. Movie heroes, obviously that's all going to be super class. Pure Saiyans, absent Majin Vegeta, right? This is pretty easy to hit for him. Obviously, Realm of Kamehameha, Turtle School, Power Beyond Super Saiyan, right? These are all going to be mostly teams with superclass characters, so like that's almost a non-issue unless you're trying some wonky setups with like the Golden Frieza, right? So he obviously wouldn't work on a Movie Heroes with Golden Frieza as lead, but it's still doable. So with that said, right, power, versatility, he's got those. Consistency, I think, is my only gripe with him, right? While he can build quickly, the big issue is getting those 6 key spheres, or even the 4 if you intend to float him. Even with the orb changing, it can be inconsistent, and that's really where things get tricky because, right, he doesn't get his guard if you don't get those key spheres, which means if you fail that 60% chance to dodge, he could be in a potentially risky situation, especially early on in some of these fights. So like that's my only beef with his consistency. Otherwise, I think everything's all good. So with that said, honestly, I think he gets a placement right here under the S tier. I don't think he's quite good enough to move him up into the ranks of Z tier, to be completely honest. And I mean, we'll be moving characters around here, but I do think he slides nicely into the S tier of characters. Which honestly, as you're noticing, the more and more we add 2025, 2026 units, a lot of the S tier is filling up with some EZAs, right? Characters that are complementary to their main teams, while their TUR counterparts tend to dominate our Z tier. Speaking of Z tier, we next have the Tech Metal Cooler. Now, if we're talking about power, versatility, and consistency, this is where things get interesting because, I mean, Cooler doesn't start off that strong, right? But where he starts getting interesting is, especially if you're running a double Metal Cooler team, is with this ability here. For every attack received or evaded, 30% attack and defense up to 150%, and then 25% for coolers on the team, and another 25 for metal coolers on the team. So you're essentially getting 200% extra to stats, and this is a huge buff. Like, it's night and day difference having 2 of these guys around as opposed to 1 as your leader. So I mean, assuming you're running them on the team, like, power is pretty crazy. Fully built up, he is able to toss out between, depending on your dupe level, of course, right? You're tossing out anywhere between 60 to 80 million supers multiple times, right? And, you know, obviously you're going to be on the lower end of that at 55%, but the higher end, right? I've seen him starting at 70 mil and going from there with obviously active supports and things like Turles' domains, right? Obviously that's going to make a huge difference for him. But honestly, and then again, you're going to do like 4 of those. So that's pretty huge. Add on to that effect, right? When we talk about versatility, this is probably one of the most versatile unit abilities you could have. Having the ability to gain a type of effect that may be beneficial to you within that turn based on the key spheres you pick up is a pretty incredible effect. Not sure if you're going to tank? Well, go for the extra dodge with the AGL key spheres. He's already got 50%. Give yourself 75. You have a boss that can be attack lowered. Go for the tech key sphere. Give yourself that additional super, and give yourself some freedom with their attack and defense lowering, as well as sealing if they can be sealed. There aren't too many bosses you can take advantage of that, but if it's there, take advantage of it, right? Things like the Triku boss, this is very, very helpful for. All right. Don't trust your dodge. Not sure too many attacks in slot 1, but you need to put them there. Go for the Int Key Spheres. Give yourself a survive KO and then some recovery at the end, right? This is especially helpful if you have a bunch of attacks in slot 1. You're not sure if he's going to live, or if you need to float him and the turn isn't looking so pretty there at the end. Very, very helpful ability, right? For example, say like you're at the end of a festival run and Gogeta's attacking in slot 3. Put him in slot 3, go for the Int Key Sphere. You know you will survive that turn. It's pretty nice. All right. Want some support? Go for his 50% support by grabbing an STR Key Sphere. Okay. If you know you're going to take some damage, grab those Fizz Key Spheres. Let him recover some HP as he attacks. And again, with the amount of damage he's doing, right, on a built-up domain turn, right, that's some pretty good recovery, right? So honestly, in terms of power and versatility, he takes it home in spades. He gets a major point in both of these categories. I think the only knock I would give him for versatility is probably the fact that his he's going to work best if he is on his own team, right? Meaning you are running 2 of them. Does that mean he doesn't work well on other Terrifying Conqueror setups? No, absolutely not. In fact, the simple fact that he also leads Terrifying Conquerors gives him a huge bonus because it's just such a wide swath and variety of boss type characters that can fit him, right? You get access to Deborah, access to Goma, right? And of course, by nature of being Wicked Bloodline, right, and the inevitable Frieza, when he drops, they're going to work very well on that team, even only with one of them, right? You kind of see this already at play running one of him on Selmax's team, right? He can still pretty hard carry with just one of him around. Consistency, honestly, I know some people find him inconsistent in ways in terms of the orbs that you need. Some people I know kind of fail the dodge with him. They don't trust that AGL key sphere to dodge. But honestly, I think I can forgive any inconsistencies from that simply because of the choice that you are given, right? He requires a bit of forethought into how you're going to use him with the turn. So, I mean, even if a opportunity doesn't present itself, like say you need that dodge, but you don't have an AGL key sphere, you have other options that you can use at your disposal to work for the team. And so that's kind of why I feel like I can forgive that consistency. Like, I mean, otherwise his only inconsistent thing is like his supers, because his supers are only, right, a 50% chance. So it's like, you know, maybe, but even then that's still not that bad because you're still going to do a super huge chunk of damage. Speaking of consistency, one of the most consistent thing about him is despite the fact that his giant form into the Metal Cooler army is it is a passive. You do have a bit of control on it by choosing if and when to float him. You can run it earlier by floating him, or ensure that it happens on turn 5 or beyond, if you keep him on, or turn 4 rather. Turn 5 if you start him on turn 1. So it's really up to you, honestly. And I think, to be completely honest, his only downfall is the fact that, he really just wants to kind of be on his own team. Otherwise, yeah, he probably deserves a place right up at the top. And honestly, I only joke a little here, but I honestly feel like he probably deserves his own tier. He's just that good compared to the other TURs. So we're going to put him in his own tier here. From there, right, we have the EZA Turles. He was the next EZA during that celebration, along with the Super EZA Cooler. I'm not going to spend too much time discussing them because honestly, they're nothing too crazy. They're both just options, and honestly, I would probably slide them both right here into A tier. Both of them serve similar functions. Cooler serves a floating support function. He could be a little sketch with the dot, or not with his damage reduction, right? If he's not hitting all of his additional supers for that extra defense. But I mean, the added support is very helpful, and he can pretty much tank most normals throughout the game, only worrying about a few major supers, right? Like even Cellmax's super, which is pretty tough to get by, his team does enough attack lowering that he could easily tank it as long as he's not showing up on that very first turn, right? So honestly, yeah, I mean, I think his role is floating support, and I think it just kind of slides right here at the bottom of the A tier. I don't think he's quite as bad as some of as moving into the B tier, right? This is where we get to those units that really, I mean, they have uses, but they're not as as bad. And speaking of which, right, we're gonna talk about moving some of these guys out of the C tier down here. So actually, no, this should be switched. There we go. That's makes more sense. Okay, there we go. That's much better. Yeah, this. The Yamcha and these, they should not be down there. I wonder how that switched. That happened to be on my LR tier list too. My C and my B switched. So let's fix that. B and C. There we go. Perfect. Alrighty then. Okay, so with that, next we have the TUR'S, right? I did say I don't want to talk about him too much, but just know like his main function is, you know, being on the team and getting this. He really helps short fights by having that extra big offense for that first turn. Right, that attack 400%, really helpful in short fights, helps you kind of push through those. But you know, after that, he can still get pretty, he can stack pretty decently and get to some pretty good offense, especially if you're running him on the Tech TUR'S variant of the movie Bosses Terrifying Conquerors team. So very, very helpful with that. And I do like having his extra 18% support around. Right, you may not think it does a big difference, but it honestly it kind of does, right? It doesn't seem like a lot, but it is noticeable when you don't have him on the team. So all right, but like I said, they both comfortably sit here at A. So that brings us to the two most recent TURs following TDC, or three rather, the Hirudegarn and Super Saiyan 3 Goku EZA and the Super Saiyan 3 Daima Goku. So we're actually going to start with the EZAs. All three of them dropped at the same time. So we're going to start with Hirudegarn. Hirudegarn is actually pretty crazy. I feel like he's getting overlooked a lot. They fixed a lot of his major problems by giving him some pretty decent defense, allowing him to greatly stack, which means he's going to build up faster, but also giving him the ability to dodge a little bit better, right? So as long as you have movie bosses or story figured, he has that extra 15% dodge for 4 turns, which means that he's basically 95% dodge for 4 turns, while getting additional super attacks, while building up extra defense from the more evasion that they do. And then to top it all off, once you get to a comfortable place defensively, he's now stacking attack for 3 turns, which means he can get some really good offense provided you built him up before. And then they just made they basically made him invincible for his first 4 turns, because he's got that 70% chance to evade, right? That great chance to evade. Then he keeps that 15% for 4 turns once you transform. He keeps that 15%. So you've got 95% chance to dodge. Then after every time you make a dodge, you get an additional 10% within the turn. So after that first dodge, you're at 100% dodge. Even better, right? He had this ability before. Even better, after he evades 3 or more attacks, he gets guaranteed dodge the next turn, right? And this is all while becoming pretty good offensively, right? This is not, you know, but before his EZA, right, you almost had no incentive to transform him because you would lose out on stacking defense. He could get a little bit better with the offense, but it wasn't anything too crazy. Now it's actually worth transforming him. And so for that, honestly, in terms of EZAs, I kind of like him more than Raditz. I feel like he's a little more impactful on the team than Raditz was, and so I'm going to move him down here into the S tier, and that puts Hirudegarn right here, sort of at the bottom of the Z tier. Now for the Super Saiyan 3 Goku. Now this one's a tough one because I do really like this card. He's incredibly good offensively, right? Dropping, right, depending on your dupe level, anywhere between 70 to 80 mil maxed out, right? Even better getting, and again, this is assuming you're at that 70% or less, right? Otherwise, he's dropping around 50 to 60 mil, which is still not bad. As your second or third attacker, he is just like a decent offensive floater, which is really good, right? Because all you really want him to do is be there for his standby counter, which is pretty good, especially if you're below the 70%. It can deal some pretty decent damage. I've seen people juice him up enough to drop Festival Vegito, for example. Granted, that was with some nuke items, but still impressive nonetheless. But I've also seen him do a pretty decent chunk on a standard supported rotation with the Gogeta on the Super Saiyan 3 Goku fight. So still pretty good, but I mean, he's really not doing anything else besides that, right? His support is only in the... His support is only when he's in standby, and when he's, you know, you're losing a massive amount of attack when you're not below that 70%. So to be completely honest, right, he loses a bit for me in both power and consistency because it is locked behind that being below 70%. Of course, he's also a dodge unit still at the core of things, which means his defense isn't that great with no damage reduction or guard to fall back on. It means that, right, should you fail one of his 50% chances to dodge, you're in kind of, well, it's 80% post super. So if you fail that 80%, assuming you're in the second or third slot, if you fail that 80%, it's kind of scary. There's a good chance you're gonna take a lot of damage, if not outright die, depending on the fight. So he loses a lot there in power and consistency, but he's very versatile. I'll give him that, right? By nature of being a Goku and a movie heroes, there's tons of teams he can be thrown onto, right? Buu Saga, right, which is still pretty good, even if you're not running a direct Buu Saga lead. Pure Saiyans, obviously full power, right? These are movie heroes, Goku's family, accelerated battle, Earthbred Fighters, Earth Protecting Heroes, Power Beyond Super Saiyan. Like, he's on so many different teams, Mastered Evolution, that, you know, you can throw him anywhere and he's just going to work. And so I do give him credit for that. But as he is mostly a one-trick pony, this is tough. I kind of feel, because that's kind of the consistent thing with our A tier, but I do feel like he's better than some of the guys here, so we'll just drop him in S tier for now, but towards the bottom. He's not really providing a whole lot to the team, but he's not bad either. He's just kind of there. Which brings us to our final unit, the Fizz Daima Mini Super Saiyan 3 Goku, the newest TUR added to the block here, leading Seekers, Mastered Evolution, Transformation Boost. It's a very powerful category, mind you, bringing back the EX Super that we haven't seen since Majin Vegeta, I think, was the last one, right? Which is very helpful. I love his EX Super because giving 100% crit to allies is just friggin' amazing. That's such a powerful ability. Add on to that, right? Changing key spheres, able to survive KO. And even better is he doesn't just have the survive KO mechanic. He has the survive KO mechanic and he has the ability to recover, which is such a useful ability for that. Too many characters have the survive KO mechanic, like UI Goku, for example, but then don't have the ability to recover. So yay, they survived, but then your next unit dies because you have 1 HP. He solves that problem, and I do appreciate that. On top of that, right, for his first 5 turns, he is a short-term character. He's pretty near invincible. There's very few attacks that can actually take him down during that. And then again, even the ones that can, you're surviving. So all in all, pretty good. In terms of power, he takes it in spades, only losing that power after the 5th turn, which is still not bad. After the 5th turn, he just becomes a floating support character, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? His active skill buffing Seekers and Mastered Evolution, 30% for 3 turns, pretty helpful. It'll allow you to get through some major, like for example, it allows Daimagoku to tank STR Daimagoku to tank Super Saiyan 3 Goku's crit, for example. So it's very good. With that said, I think my only gripe with him is his versatility. He is not as versatile as some of the other Daima characters, needing to have both Seekers and Mastered Evolution, and really only helping those guys out, right? I mean, not to say that what else he's doing with the key sphere changing isn't helpful to other teams, like for example teams that have Beast Gohan on them, or the crit EX Super is not helpful for those. It just he's not going to be at his best unless you have those Seekers or those Mastered Evolution characters. Now granted, you only need 3. It's still kind of tough. So that's about my only gripe with him, is his versatility. Otherwise, consistency can be played around, right? He only becomes truly inconsistent after turn 5. Power, right, in terms of supporting defensive power, I think he's pretty good. Offensively, he's nothing too crazy. I think it really comes in his defense and his support and his ability to survive. So for that, I do think he falls right in here in the Z tier. Now, within the tiers, these aren't exactly ordered, so I wouldn't worry too much about the specific placement here, but this is kind of what I'm looking at for the tiers. Metal Cooler leading his own way. I mean, he's at the top of Z tier, but I think he's just, I want to make a tier for him because he is just like, he's that good, that he stands out among the rest of the Z tier. In terms of other characters I wanted to bring up here, there's a few characters towards the bottom I do want to move up. Characters like Daima Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta, right? Especially now with this guy, I do feel like deserve a shot to move up a tier. So I did want to make sure I acknowledge that. Same with, where is he? Where did it go? Okay, well, actually, no. I was going to say Glorio kind of moves up a bit, but honestly, if anything, he would just kind of move further ahead here. I don't think it's quite enough. Glorio is such an insane help on this, on the Super Saiyan 3 Daima team. So just throwing that out there. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead. This is our tier list. This is what we're looking at. Again, I prefer tier lists like this, as it gives us a more broad, overarching sense of how the units rank amongst all of each other. This is strictly Dokkan Fest, mind you, and their EZAs. I'm not muddying the waters with banner units or free units, as I think that kind of really messes with things here. So it's strictly that, and I do prefer this. But if you're somebody who prefers a traditional top 10, this is kind of what I'm thinking for the top 10. Coming in at number 10, I think, is Tech Pan. I think she's highly overlooked by a lot of people. Incredibly useful, very versatile, and I mean, so many teams need orbs, and she gives them. And I think that that's worthy of note. Followed closely by the Tech Daimagoku, the character everybody thought was going to fall off by 11th anniversary, but if anything has only continued to get better. Coming up at number 8, we have UI Goku. Very, very versatile character, although on Realm of God's team, which is really where he wants to be at, he shines. You're very rarely going to have problems with him. Coming up at number 7 here, we have the Nappa and Vegeta. Pretty solid unit, all things considered. Pretty good all around. Coming in at number 6, AGL Gohan. Very, very powerful unit, especially with the new Beast Gohan at your disposal, being able to buff him while tanking slot 1 very effectively for him. As well as providing some tremendous amount of support for the whole team, right? That 3-turn support of his is just incredible. Moving on, we bring in the God Goku coming in at number 5. Very, very good unit, very, very powerful unit. Kind of tricky to use because he's really only good for that first turn and those couple of post-revive turns, but utilizing him properly makes for some fun rotations, and I do think he's definitely very good in terms of TURs, right? Number 3, number 4, sorry, coming in with the Beerus. Honestly, you could probably swap Beerus and God Goku back and forth, and I wouldn't really argue with you. I do think both are pretty good. Beerus offense locked behind facing Realm of God's enemies is kind of tricky. But, I mean, if you get the chance to proc that 300%, it works out. And even then, right, the support, the countering, everything else he's doing can still kind of be forgiven, especially when, you know, the rest of the team is consisting of characters like UI Goku, God Goku, and other characters that can kind of make up for the fact that he's not there. I think, right, his active skill is doing a lot of good work for that team. Finally, coming in at number 3. Now, this is a tough one, but Diamond Super Saiyan 3 Goku, followed by Deborah, of course, at number 2, and then should be no surprise, we have Metal Cooler coming in at number 1. I don't think that should come as any surprise to anybody. So if you're into traditional top 10s, this is my top 10. I'm not going to go detailed explanation as I kind of did that already as I placed them within their tiers. So there we go. That is our TUR tier list for the month of August before we head into GDC. If you guys like the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And in the comments down below, let us know how would you rank some of these units? Do you prefer our system of ranking here, or would you prefer a top 10? Personally, I'm always going to be a fan of this style as it gives a much better view of the true power of the units in relation to other units. Too many people look at a top 10 and write off anybody who doesn't make it into that list, and I think that's a mistake, right? There's a lot of characters here that do have a lot of value even if they don't make it into that top 10. So that's it for the video, guys. If nothing else, thanks for watching, and aloha.